All right, third time the charm. My goodness, not sure what's going on with Facebook Live. We've been having all sorts of issues, but just waiting for Fiona to come online. We've had a busy week. We've been in Melbourne for networking last week, and also doing some core confidence. It's been fun. And today, what we thought we would do, here she comes. There you are. You're on my shoulder
No,
again. Oh, at least I
not
can
our
see you this
preference.
time. No. Anyway. Sophia, I was just saying we've been in Melbourne. There we are. At least we can see our faces this time. We'll just have to go with imperfect, which is one of our things we're embracing as part of the book, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So let's jump in. I was just saying we've been in Melbourne networking last week, doing some core confidence lunch and learns. One of the conversations that comes up is around, when we think about career progression, some other people seem to have a bit of an advantage. Either they've got natural relationships with senior stakeholders that seem to help them progress. And, the comments that I don't necessarily have those same sort of relationships, and they seem to have come quite easily. And I haven't had access to those sorts of people or opportunities to build those relationships. One of the the 10 building blocks to confidence is build relationships. Sophie, jump on in, and I guess let's start with if you are one of those people who kind of look around your organization and think, actually, I don't really feel like I've got advocates. I don't feel like I've got much peer support, or anyone who's there actively supporting and sponsoring me to progress. Where do I start?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And it's interesting how often it comes up, and this sort of perception that I'm not getting the same access to ways of meeting and talking to people. I think one of the things we know is that people tend to gravitate, and they like working with, they like doing things with people who are like them. So that's just a normal part of being human. And one of the things we talk about is, find common ground, find ways in which you can connect with those people who are important to you. And, if you work in a certain industry, and if you work in a part of an organization, if there's a particular charity your organization supports, there are so many ways, possibly there's a sport you both enjoy, or there's, you may like going to the theatre. There are so many ways that we can have connections with people that are not just about the work or the traditional sort of, golf course networking that happens. So we certainly encourage people to think about, well, what is it that I like doing? What's genuinely something that, I actually enjoy doing and being part of? And how do I connect with other people? And how do I make that part of my, a regular event in my life? And whether that's every couple of weeks or a month. I think the other thing we underestimate is industry networking events. There's usually every industry has, and there may be a couple of people in your organisation who, like you, are feeling a bit as though they'd like to do more. They're not quite sure, and maybe you might go along together to one of those. We'd then encourage you to each go off in your own direction and make some conversation with the people you don't know. But sometimes it can be nice to turn up with 2 or 3 colleagues. So certainly there's lots of ways to think about how can I engage with others. That's not just specifically about a work project.
Yeah. I think, we talk a lot about building your internal network. I think for most of us, if you're a little bit social, that's probably easier than building an external network. Like projects, or I love your idea about, if there's charities, or, ideally look for, number one, figure out who specifically you're looking to build relationship with. And that may be actually then about what outcome are you seeking to achieve. So we talk about, what your why, and then who can help you get there. And that talks very much into chapter 9 on asking for help. And I think there's another piece, we won't go into it tonight, Fee, but, there's another piece there around, roadblocks to actually asking for help. I think the thing that I'm constantly amazed at, and I think this is personal as well as, I see it with my clients, is every time someone has a little bit of courage to reach out to someone, particularly who's external to their organisation, but also internal in their organisation, but particularly external, because I think it takes a little bit more courage. If you're helping someone outside your organisation, you really have no vested interest. Whereas, on some level, at some level. If they work in your organization, you know, we as leaders are there to support all of our employees, not just our direct reports. But, you know, the clients who reach out to people who they don't know, who, you know, it's really, it's cold, it's kind of semi-warm, because often it's, you know, I was speaking to mutual contact who suggested I get in touch to talk, you know, to learn more from you about your career experience. Would you be open to catching up for a coffee or breakfast some point in the next sort of 4 weeks or so? The people that do that are constantly amazed, number one, at how common the response is yes. And my view is it's often at least 8 out of 10 people, or 8 out of 10 times you'll get a yes. And then not only that they get a yes, that actually when they sit down and have that conversation, how valuable it is, how easy it felt.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know. We put some kind of mental barrier around this, and we sort of make it as though people are out of reach. And, you know, we're all humans, and most people really like to help. So if they possibly can, they will squeeze you in. And even if it's only, you know, a half an hour coffee, it's amazing with someone who, you know, is interested in speaking to you and you've got some good questions, how much you'll cover in that time. And I think there's got to be some preparedness to have a little bit of a risk. You know, as you said, if you reach out to 5 people, at least 4 of them are likely to say yes. So you've definitely got a lot of upside there. And, you know, for the small amount that may say no, that's okay. And usually they're very polite about it. They just can't fit it in at the moment, or they've got too much on their plate, or for whatever reason. But it's not going to be a bad experience. And it's just that little, you know, 30 seconds, 60 seconds of courage to send the request, or to get on the phone and ask for that interaction.
Yeah, I'd actually, challenge 5 requests. I would almost guarantee you'll get a yes from at least 2, if not 3. I'd almost be prepared to put money on that, actually, because in my experience, then the amount of positive response, and I think there's a piece, you know, you can give people permission to say no.
Yeah,
you know, if you're too busy, or, you know, you don't have the capacity, please, you know, feel free to let me know. You know, I talk about saying that's permission to say no. Often people might say not, look, I'd love to, but not now. So, you know, touch base in 3 months' time. And so that's, you know, there's lots of different ways that you can deal with it to make it feel easy and comfortable to reach out. But I think that's a really good challenge in terms of an action step off the back of, you know, this live session, is actually reach out to 5 people who are in your professional world, who you may know of, or you may not know of. Another one that I get clients to do all the time is go and connect in with past bosses. Say you're looking for, you know, you're looking for some informal mentors, and be specific. You know, I'm looking for some women who can come into my world and be supportive in terms of my professional and personal goals. Do you know of anyone? And again, a client who had a session last week with did that, sat down with a past boss. And he's already made one introduction on her behalf. So I think it's not just who you know. LinkedIn is just amazing in terms of the proximity and the reach that it gives you. Never underestimate how much you might get a yes from an absolute cold, genuine request to connect. I think, you know, LinkedIn is full of, you know, lots of sales pieces, but when you do reach out genuinely to connect, as I said, you know, my clients get really strong and positive results with people who they may not even have a common connection, a common connection at all. I mean, people will often, I've got a very big LinkedIn network, I will get often a lot of requests to make an introduction. If I don't know that person personally, I genuinely just tell them to go back and connect directly, because, you know, there's no value in an introduction from me personally, because, you know, we don't have a strong personal connection. So, you know, there's lots of different ways. Who do you know? Who can you connect with on LinkedIn that potentially you could have a coffee with? Who do you know that could have some networks that could introduce you to? And I think a great call out challenge is, let's, you know, try and make 5 connections. And ultimately, you know, even if you get 2 connections and 2 phone calls or coffees, that's, you know, there's some pretty rich conversation that could come from that.
Yes, yeah. I think we really, all of us, underestimate the power of the network. And Kate, you and I have been watching this with the book recently. You know, our network has been so generous in on sharing this into their network and telling people about, you know, there's this core confidence book. I think it'll be really interesting with you. And so then we end up speaking to people that we don't know personally. So I think people are really happy to, I love your idea about the, you know, go to your old bosses, see who they know, because everyone has got a more diverse or a different network to your own. And it's really great to tap into that. And again, because you've got a connection point there and there's someone you know in common, you're even more likely to get that favourable, yeah, of course I've got half an hour, or even as Kate's saying, maybe just get that phone call. It can still be a very rewarding thing. I know I did one recently for one of the YPWA members who was moving to WA, which is my hometown. And we were just having a lovely conversation. We did it by telephone for about 35 minutes. And I think, you know, she was feeling really quite well supported and resourced. And also she had a bit of a plan for the timing of what she was doing, which was quite important. So there's lots of things that can come from that conversation that you might not have thought through, but just having someone reflect back to you can help you get a little bit clearer.
Yeah, we've got, you know, there's no shortage of stories that, you know, we each have personally, or that our clients have got in terms of where these relationships can go. I think, you know, there's a quote in the book, a simple hello can lead to a million things. And it's not just that connection, it's them, you know, often I am talking with people, I'm like, I can't remember where we first met. And how the introduction came, because I feel like I've known you for quite a long time. And a lot of these professional connections have really turned into strong friendships as well. So, you know, what was originally a professional, Fiona and I, her husband's online now watching, but, you know, it was a recruiter of mine at the time when I left corporate who introduced me to Fiona's husband. He and I had a coffee. He said, you really need to meet my wife. We caught up for lunch probably 3 months later. And then we kept catching up for lunch over about a 2-year period. And, you know, that was, I don't know how long ago now, probably 5 years or something. But, you know, you just never know. And the introductions, you know, we've made for each other is huge. So I think it's certainly something that my observations, Fiona, is people don't do it well. They're not proactive enough around building their network. They're not proactive enough about seeking supportive relationships in and outside our organisation. So if we circle back to that question around, well, if I'm not on the golf course, if I'm not at lunch, if I miss that opportunity, how do I put myself in the picture? One of the things we say, number one, is be proactive. And we've talked a little bit about how to do that in and outside your organisation. But I think there's another skill, which is if you do feel like a conversation starts and you're out of the loop a little bit, it's completely okay to say, hey, listen, I'm not across that. Or, you know, it feels a little bit like, you know, there's a conversation that's happened that I wasn't part of. You know, can we just pause for a second? Can you just fill me in so that, you know, I can contribute on an equal level, or something like that? You know, that's a little bit, you know, it feels a little bit kind of clumsy, but it's about finding your own words that mean that you could comfortably say that in a meeting, particularly if it is in a work context, so that actually you can actually have a really good, valuable conversation. Have you got anything to add to that one, Fee?
Yeah, I completely agree that, you know, every time as you say, it can feel uncomfortable, but it's really worth voicing into the system what's going on for lots of reasons. One is to catch yourself up and to make sure that you are then across whatever's being discussed so that you can contribute properly. But it's also about kind of just subtly reminding everyone that we all need to be on the same page here. We're all working together. And when some of us have, you know, been in offline conversations, it actually means it's more difficult to collaborate and do what we're trying to do as a team. So if you do it in a genuinely nice way and you're not trying to point score or to be negative about it, but you just kind of go, look, I really want to be involved here, I want to be up to speed, and you actually take it from that point of view, I think you can really open up some doors and people might start to realize how important it is that everyone is part of the conversation and able to contribute. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just that, you know, I'm thinking as you're talking, you know, even if it's, you know, I'm noticing that, well, last time we caught up, we got to hear, it sounds like things have moved on a little bit since that last meeting. Is there anything I need to be across before we start this meeting? And that just, it's a safe, easy, comfortable way that people can say, oh, actually, you know, we caught off offline. They don't need to necessarily say how or when, and here's some of what we talked about. And again, you're orientating it around having an effective and productive conversation, as opposed to you left me out and that's not fair, which is how it can feel a little bit. But that's not super helpful in terms of navigating the dynamic.
Yes, yeah. Now, sometimes we just got to rise above that and, absolutely feel your feelings, but what is actually going to be useful here? What is going to actually shift things? What is actually going to get me the outcome I'm looking for, rather than just feeling hurt? How can I be proactive and shift this? And we can have a more productive conversation together.
Yeah, cool. So I think one of the call outs, or one of the things we'd really encourage you to do over the course of the next week, is think about your network. Think about reaching out to some people who you maybe haven't seen for a while. So past bosses is a really good example, or past colleagues, or get on if there's a particular person. I'm always getting clients to do this when they're doing due diligence on career plans, to look at if there's a particular role that they are aspiring to do down into the future, actually to reach out and find a couple of people who are doing that role, who either they could get on the phone to or grab a coffee with, and actually get an idea of what it's like to do that role. So rather than spending 3 years on a path to a career and a role that you think you want to do, and then finding out it's actually not right for you, actually doing some due diligence. So, reach out, connect with some people, either in your past colleagues, ask a past colleague or boss if there's anyone they know, if you're looking for an informal mentor, but, actually step up. Let's do the challenge. Reach out to 5 people, and let's see if we can get you, 2 phone calls, a coffee, a breakfast. I say my favorite comment, Fiona, is everyone loves a little eggs Benedict. It's a particular nice surprise on a weekday. So often, people are busy for lunch. Very few people have time for, dinner. But, when you ask for breakfast, and it means that instead of getting to the office at 9, they've got to get somewhere for an 8 o'clock, and they get a little eggs Benedict into their week. That's often a nice little surprise. And something nice to do. So, that might increase the levels of yes you get.
Yeah, I think exactly. Just make it fun, make it enjoyable, make it easy for someone to say yes, and follow up. So if someone says to you, I can't do it now, in a month or 2 months or even 3 months, make sure you put it in your diary and you actually follow up. And I have to say, Kate, you were particularly good at this, because when we did first meet, straight away, whenever we'd have a lunch, you go, okay, when's the next one? And we get it straight away in our diaries. And I think that's the thing, is when we're talking about building relationships and networks, it's not just a one-off situation. It's we've had a conversation, but if there is some rapport and you do have a good time, how is it that we can connect again? And not to be burdensome or, demanding with it, but, you can say to them, look, I've really enjoyed our conversation. I know a lot's going on for you. I know I'm going to have some more questions. Would it be okay if I get back in touch in 3 months' time and just get a little bit more input from you? And, people invariably will say yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So reach out 5 people. Let's try and get you either coffee or phone calls with 2 of those 5 people. Really keen to hear how you go with it. As I said, I'd be pretty comfortable committing to at least 2 out of that 5 will give you a yes, and possibly even more. And, I just never underestimate the impact of connecting with someone, of building a relationship. Consistency is important. It's not just about slamming out emails. Following up is really important. And building a relationship is a conversation. It's not just about emails. It's not just about being a LinkedIn contact. I had one client say to me, I've got a reasonable LinkedIn network, but it doesn't feel like I have a network. And I replied saying, well, your LinkedIn connections are connections only. They're not a relationship. And we have to do something to take something from a connection into the relationship. And that's on all of us to be able to do that. But never underestimate the value that can come from, taking that initial first step, and then really leveraging and experiencing the opportunities that building those relationships can bring. So thank you for being online with us. Fee, as always, wonderful to see you. And we will touch base for next week at 6 p.m. with our Facebook Lives.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.